Hi biology students. Today you're going to figure out what the DNA molecule looks like at a molecular level, so really close up, using a puzzle that I made to help you kind of work through the different parts. So you should have a piece of paper that looks like this. You can see that it has 8 puzzle pieces, and each of the puzzle pieces has some letters on it. What I want you to do is look at the big letters that are on those puzzle pieces. So you notice that the top 2 have G's on them, and then T's are here and here. The C's are here and here, and then these last ones have A's on them. That's really important for this next step. What you need to do is go ahead and color each puzzle piece that is the same letter, the same color. So for example, if I am coloring the G's, I'm going to color the whole piece pink for that G, and also the whole piece pink for that G. Don't worry about staying in the lines at this point because you're going to cut them out anyway. Next, I want to color the T's. So I'm going to use green. I'm going to color this T all green and this T all green. Okay, so keep doing that until you've also colored in the C's and the A's. So in total, you're going to need 4 different colors. Okay, now that you've got those all colored in, the next step you need to do is to cut them out. So you do want to cut them exactly on these lines. So I'm going to show you on this C, I want to be as precise as possible and cut it out right on those solid lines so that you've got 8 total pieces. Okay, so now here's some sample pieces that I have cut out. You can see my C's are orange, my A's are green, my T's are blue, and my G's are purple. The next step that you want to do is you want to put these together so that they all fit into one puzzle. There's going to be some spaces in the puzzle, and not all of the letters will be right side up. Don't flip the letters over so that they're showing white. Make sure that the colored side is up. But some of them might not be right side up in that the A, instead of being like this, it might be like this. Okay, so your job is to solve the puzzle, put all the pieces together so that they fit together, and then once you do that, add some tape to the pieces. So you can see I've got some tape here and some tape here to help stick it together so it stays in that puzzle formation. Okay, once you've think you've got the hang of this, pause the video and stick your puzzle together using tape again once you think you have it. If you need to have it checked, the substitute teacher does have a sample of this and she can check it for you. Okay, now that your puzzle is all taped together, it should look something like this. The last step is to put it into your notebook. So actually tape it into your notebook. Do that by rolling up little pieces of tape and putting it behind the paper. You're going to do some writing on here, and I want to make sure that the tape isn't in the way when you're doing your writing. So stick it in there with some tape, but roll the tape up so it can go behind the paper. When you've got that done, come back to this video and continue watching. All right, let's do some notes. This is a DNA molecule, and what I write on this molecule, I also want you to write in your notebook as far as what this structure shows. Okay, the first thing I want to go over is what each of these pieces represents. So this whole piece right here, and you can circle this in your notebook, okay, that is something called a nucleotide. Okay, it's a nucleotide. Every nucleotide has 3 parts. The parts are the base. Leave a space here, we'll come back to that. The second part is this S right here, which stands for sugar. And the third part is this P right here, which stands for phosphate. Okay, so you can see when you look at all of these pieces, they all have an S and a P, an S and a P. So all of these nucleotides, each of these puzzle pieces has a sugar, a phosphate, and then the base. The base is the big letter in the middle. This one happens to be a C, but this has a G, this has a T, and this has an A. So the bases could be an A, a T, a G, or a C. There are 4 different possible bases in DNA. They stand for the words adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine, but if you just know them as A, T, G, and C, I'll be happy with that. Okay, so you've got the nucleotides identified. So there are 8 nucleotides in this particular DNA molecule. A real DNA molecule is made up of millions of nucleotides, but we're just showing a little piece of a DNA molecule. The second thing I want you to recognize, based on these nucleotides, is where the phosphates and the sugars fall. So if again we follow our phosphates and sugars, this side starts with a P, S, P, S, P, S, P, S. The opposite side starts with an S, P, S, P, S, P, S, P. So the first thing you should write down for this is that the phosphates and the sugars alternate on the sides of the ladder. Okay, so they go back and forth. But the other thing, besides them alternating, is the fact that this one started with a P and this one started with an S. So they are opposite each other. We call that anti-parallel. So the sides of the ladder are anti-parallel. Okay. Instead of saying this side starts with a phosphate and this side starts with a sugar, what scientists use to denote those are numbers. So the phosphate end is the 5' end, and the sugar end is the 3' end. So this phosphate side on the left starts at the 5' and it ends down here with a sugar, so it ends with a 3'. And the sugar side on the right starts with a 3' and it ends with a 5', a phosphate. I remember the 5 and the phosphate go together because they both start with a F sound. Okay, so they're anti-parallel. This side runs 5' to 3' this way, and this side runs 5' to 3' that way. So the two sides alternate phosphates and sugars, but they're opposite each other in their alternating pattern. All right, so that's the sides of the ladder. Now let's take a look at the rungs or the steps of the ladder. So in the middle here, okay, where each of these nucleotides bonds together, is taped together, that tape represents an actual bond, a chemical bond between those molecules. So that type of bond right there in the middle is called a hydrogen bond. And this is a very weak bond. It's an easy to break bond. This will become important later on. The bonds are the tape that you added between the phosphates and the sugars, so down the sides. All of those are what's called a covalent bond. And those are very strong bonds. Okay, so we've got covalent bonds on the side, which are strong and hard to break, hydrogen bonds in the middle, which are weak and easy to break. Okay, now let's just take a little closer look at the bases themselves. So in my model here, you can see that on the left side, the bases read A, C, C, A. Now your model hopefully is different than that. Maybe yours reads GTTG or GTGT or something like that. That's because every DNA molecule is a little different. Okay, that's where we get some of the variability or differences between people and between different living things, is that the order of the letters, the order of these bases, creates the differences in life. So different base order equals different DNA. Remember, we said DNA is instructions. In order to write the instructions, we need letters that can be put into different words, different combinations. And that's what these bases are. You can think of them as the letters to create the different words. My word that I spelled is probably different from the word you spelled, and that's good. We wanted to do that. Now the last thing I want you to see with the bases, is there any pattern in which bases match up with each other? If I have an A on one side, do I always have a T opposite of it? I'm going to check my molecule. Here I have an A, and sure enough, right here I have a T. So A always pairs with T, and C and G always pair together. Okay, so in DNA, when we're building the two sides of the molecule, so here's one side and here's the other side, what we say is that they are complementary to each other. Okay, that doesn't mean that they give each other compliments. That means that they match each other the correct way. And by that matching, we mean that every A has to be across from a T, and every C has to be across from a G. Okay, two more things to wrap up our introduction to the DNA molecule here. The first thing is the label on this. So DNA molecule should be across the top of your picture. All right, and we're going to write out what DNA actually stands for, because that'll take us back to something we did earlier in the year. D is for deoxy, so it's lacking some oxygen. N is for nucleic, so it has something to do with the nucleus. And A is for acid. Deoxyribonucleic acid. That's what DNA stands for. Now, back when you were learning about carbohydrates and proteins and things like that, you also studied a little bit about nucleic acids. This is where we get into more information about what a nucleic acid is. So the big molecule that DNA is classified under is a nucleic acid. That's called the polymer. The monomer for a nucleic acid, I already talked about, is each one of these puzzle pieces. That's the nucleotide. So back where you have nucleotide, in parentheses you can write monomer. So one big nucleic acid polymer is made out of hundreds and thousands of smaller nucleotide monomers. And then the last thing that this model of DNA isn't showing you is that DNA is not like a flat ladder like this. It's actually a twisted ladder. It's something called a double helix. So if we took this flat piece of paper, that is your model, and we twisted it up and coiled it, that would be the actual three-dimensional shape of DNA. So if you didn't get every single one of these things that I wrote on my DNA molecule in your notebook, rewind and go back and make sure you get everything written down, because all of these structures are going to be important as we go into how DNA works.